All right, let's get started. Welcome to the Great Data States series, North Dakota. We are so excited to have you here with us today to travel virtually all the way to North Dakota to hear their data interoperability story. I am Jonathan Barry Wolf. I'm a marketing and communications member of the Project Unicorn team, and I'll be running us through some basic housekeeping items for the webinar today, as well as talking through Project Unicorn and some of the resources that we have available to you. We have an incredible group of participants in this webinar today. Obviously, Project Unicorn, we're a part of this, partnering with CETA on this incredible series of events. We couldn't do this without them, and we're really glad to have them be a part of the Great Data States webinar series. We're joined today by representatives from the North Dakota Department of Public Instruction, IMS Global Learning Consortium, and Randa Solutions. It's a great action-packed conversation with some excellent panelists. We're very excited that you can join us and participate. Our agenda, basically, the timing's a little off there, I'm noticing, but the agenda stays the same. We're gonna begin with a welcome and introduction, a framing of the webinar and our work, passing things over to Susan Bearden, to the Director of Digital Programs at Project Unicorn, to frame our conversation. Then we will be passing things over to Tracy with the North Dakota Department of Public Instruction and our panelists, followed by some Q&A, and then thank you and next steps. As we are going through the presentations, please drop your questions in the chat. We will try to answer them in real time. And if we can't in the moment, we will hold them off and do a facilitated question and answer at the end. A few items from Project Unicorn specifically. We are an organization dedicated to advancing and implementing data interoperability in K-12 EdTech tools. So we have a lot of resources and programs for you to take advantage of today. If you are a state leader joining us today, please review the State Commitment to Principles. This is a resource we developed alongside CCSSO and CETA. Essentially, it's a list of some best practices you can commit to when interacting with districts, schools, teachers, and families when it comes to data interoperability. This is an incredible resource. Please check it out. The link is going to be in the chat, and the links for all of these resources will be posted there as well throughout the webinar. Additionally, encourage your district's ESAs to sign the School Network Pledge. Signing the School Network Pledge basically is an outward display of a dedication to data interoperability. And when a school network signs the pledge, we can come alongside with technical assistance, resources, and other programs to help school district leaders on the path to data interoperability implementation. So please pass that along to folks. We'd love to come alongside as many people as we can. Additionally, we are in the second annual time for the School System Data Survey. Last year's survey resulted in a State of the Sector report, which essentially took the pulse of data interoperability in K-12 schools nationwide. The results of that report basically inform all of the programming that we and our organizational partners are working on this year. And so we are in the second annual year for the survey. Please complete this survey, pass it along to those who can take the survey, and everyone who completes it gets a $25 Amazon gift card. So not bad. Be sure to participate. Also, please sign up for the Project Unicorn newsletter. We use this to promote events like this, resources, programs, and a lot of the different offerings that our partner organizations have. So sign up for the newsletter. You go to www.projectunicorn.org, and at the bottom of the page, you can enter your email address and receive the newsletter. And now I will pass things over to Susan Bearden, the Director of Digital Programs at Project Unicorn, to start things off. Susan.
Hello, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here today. I'm very excited about moderating this fantastic panel of presenters today. I just wanted to say a few things before we get started. As you can see, here are our panelists today. We are thrilled to have this group talk about how they have leveraged a blockchain in North Dakota to help students to empower students to control their transcripts. And just want to encourage you, if you have questions throughout the webinar, feel free to put them in the chat. Use the chat rather than the Q&A. I know that the Q&A is a feature of webinars, but we prefer to use the chat. So as we go along, if you have questions for the speakers, go ahead and add your questions to the chat, and we will either answer them at that moment or we will save them till the end. But I don't want you to forget a question just because you didn't have a chance to ask it at the right time. We're pretty informal. We think of this as being an enlarged conversation. So please don't hesitate to ask any questions. Just before we get started, I just wanted to go over some community agreements. And these come from Courageous Conversations About Race by Glenn Singleton. And although our conversation is not specifically about race today, I believe that these agreements are really valuable for any time you're having any sort of community conversation. So I would just encourage all of you to stay engaged during today's webinar and speak your truth, whatever that is. If you are new to blockchain and you have questions, that's okay. Go ahead and ask them. It's okay if you're not a blockchain expert. Everybody's here to learn. Want to encourage everyone to understand that you're learning something new today. So you may experience some discomfort, and that is also okay. That's part of the whole learning process. And like I said, I want to encourage everybody to add their questions to the chat. We want to encourage everybody to make their voice heard, and just also understand that you may have questions following the webinar. And if you do, we will be happy to connect you to our panelists. I'm sure they'd be thrilled to talk with you about their ongoing work, and we're happy to support them. So moving forward, okay, Jonathan, I think we're just going to go ahead and I'm going to turn it over to Tracy, who is going to talk about North Dakota's blockchain story. Tracy, take it away.
Thanks, Susan and Jonathan. Pleasure to be presenting on North Dakota Digital Credentials. We're very close to being in production with all of our K-12 students. Just a brief background, and nobody likes to listen to me speak to slides. I don't like to speak to slides either. So I like just an open forum of engagement. The history of how we got here is North Dakota has got a statewide longitudinal data system, which every state is aware of, and it contains a lot of rich K-12 data on our students. Well, North Dakota was able to really expand on our SLDS and start providing services. So approximately 7 years ago, we produced a statewide electronic transcript, and by statute now today, all districts must use that. The way it works is there are institutions that do have logins to our e-transcript system, like our local universities and colleges have access to it. And we actually have got routines in there that will publish a version of their transcript into their imaging systems, index it. So it's very integrated here in the state between K-12 and higher ed. We also allow students to apply for college through an education portal that's single sign-on right from their student information system as well. Apply for scholarships. We have got the ability to calculate scholarship eligibility in the state, which has really reduced the amount of time principals take to authorize or claim that the student is scholarship eligible. But the reason why we're here with digital credentials is the North Dakota legislature a couple of sessions ago decided that they wanted to explore how states use blockchain and what are some viable use cases. And I thought, well, you know, something empowering our students to own and control their own records through blockchain would be a viable use case for the state. And so through funding from the NCESL SLDS grant that we had, as well as North Dakota state funding, we got the approval to go forward. And our objective was to figure out how to use blockchain. As soon as I brought this use case forward and we started to kick this off, I got to thinking, well, you know something, we don't know anything about blockchain. We don't know anything about digital credentialing. And from those outreaches, I got to know this community. ASU was currently working on an ILR project, Integrated Learning Record Project, and they were able to introduce me to IMS Global, because what we determined from the get-go is, hey, we can put this on a student's wallet, but who are they going to share it to? And who's going to be able to take the data? There is no data standards in this. And so from working with IMS Global, which the comprehensive learner record is a standard underneath the IMS Global, we were able to really start to get an idea of what we would even do with standards-based transcript. And working with IMS Global and Randa, we produced a standards-based or a standard definition of a high school transcript within the CLR. Additionally, exploring blockchain, we really were thinking that in the get-go that, hey, this data is going to be on blockchain. Do we feel good about that? But then we got introduced to self-sovereign identity and trust over IP, which basically the student nor their data is on blockchain, which is even a better fit for North Dakota. And additionally, we felt this really needed to be an open source reference model if this is actually going to grow beyond our borders. So we extended the existing e-transcript portal to be able to publish to a wallet. That was a lot of work by Randa, which Marty will be discussing here shortly. The trust over IP, self-sovereign ID, zero knowledge proof are technologies that we're all implementing and excited about, using ILR best practices and the CLR, of course, and to the point where an open wallet has been established to receive these credentials. So just touching upon some of the standards, which I know Mark and Marty will do as well. I mean, these are all the different standards that have come into this, and plus some more into this project. There's been a large working group in a collab, a lot of people representing these standards. The collabs have been probably one of the most successful things I've ever seen in my career as far as building out a product with the input from industry, standard setting bodies, philanthropic organizations that are all striving to get to these national and if not international standards. So it's been a great experience. Phase 1 and phase 2 of this project, as I discussed, we took our North Dakota e-transcripts and we publish the e-transcript as a comprehensive learner record, which is JSON data structure. It goes into the OCP, Open Credentials Publisher, whereby then it is signed, digitally signed multiple times, wrapped in a W3C verifiable credential and published to a student's wallet. The student also does have the option of publishing that to a mobile wallet after they've published to their web wallet. And so here, oops, we stopped sharing. Did I goof up? Okay, there you go, Mark. Introducing Mark Luba to talk about the CLR and IMS Global Standards.
Thanks, Tracy. And thank you and the team at North Dakota and Marty at Randa Solutions and other members of IMS for their collaboration to help get us to this important milestone. I did want to share with the group the vision for what the Comprehensive Learner Record Standard is intended to offer to education and the workforce community. You know, the standard was developed over the course of many years, actually, by our members working in collaboration with each other, you know, North Dakota, Randa, and many others, with the vision that learning happens obviously at the very earliest stages of a person's academic career. So think about Head Start, think about the earliest primary schools, and all of the different use cases that might be valuable to be able to capture information about what a learner knows and can do, or what challenges that learner may be having, and having that information actually travel from school to school and from primary school to secondary school, and perhaps into the military or into higher education. And across the entire learning spectrum, these records of achievement that can be used by the learner and on behalf of the learner and into her career. and throughout her career in the spirit of lifelong learning. These records of achievement will be useful for her to share through her digital wallet and to be able to combine achievement types in such a way to advance her personal and professional interests and aspirations. So it's a very powerful capability made possible by the fact that products can share this information in a secure and reliable way. And that's all tied, of course, to interoperability. Excuse me, the interoperability, which where one of the places that IMS offers the greatest value for the market. IMS actually certifies products to be interoperable. So in this journey that a learner has proceeded along, naturally there are numerous software products that are going to be involved. And so for her records to be able to be transferable across these various domains and organizations, that data has to travel in a very stable way, and in a way that doesn't lose or confuse the data. So that interoperability is provided through this certification service that IMS provides to its members. So platforms like Randa Solutions and their open credential publisher are actually listed on our product directory along with the certifications that they've demonstrated based on actual testing of interoperability. So we're very happy to be able to provide that service to the market to allow for these learning records to travel from product to product over the course of the learner's lifetime. So having that interoperability now opens up new capabilities that have never been possible before. I mean, you can imagine a situation where institutions that are accumulating these records of achievement on behalf of their learner will be able to be accessed not only for that data to go to a learner's wallet that they control, but also potentially for that information to be accessible by employers in what we think of as a virtual talent network. Employers with job qualifications and requirements for particular types of skills or certifications or degrees can actually issue requests along this virtual talent network that would be served up by the digital wallets and also the institutions in an anonymized and secure fashion, so that employers would have access to information about prospective job candidates. So when they find a candidate that meets their needs, they can request an interview in a very anonymous type of what we call blind search capability. We've actually demonstrated this through a project that's called Project Wellspring. So I'd welcome you to connect with that Project Wellspring on the IMS website and learn more about what's possible with these open standards. So now I think we're going to see what's possible, and Marty's going to do a demonstration.
Thanks, Mark. So let's see it. I will say one thing that's very important about this project and its approach is that collab. Tracy mentioned it up front, but so PCG, Public Consulting Group, has been a major part of how this all came together, and I just want to recognize what's been done there, where we brought a lot of different voices in the room. So this was not just Randa building a open source solution for North Dakota. This was PCG, Randa, ID Ramp, Evernym, a number of parties really collaborating. And what we built interoperability from the start. So that's just an important note whenever you're thinking about a scalable project like this. A big part of it is having a lot of the stakeholders, the voices at the table that are leading this type of work in the community. So with that being said, here we have the open source project lives at IEEE SA Open. All the tools are here. You have the CLR extract tool. You have the publisher itself, which does the signing and packaging. You have a test client where you can, try it out on your own. You have the web wallet, which I'm going to show you in the publishing service that allows you to publish to digital blockchain-based wallets. So just to give you a high-level view, really simply, not really simply, but we have this test client that allows you to connect to the endpoint. You can register a publisher client and publish a pre-built CLR. What this does is this packages and signs that CLR object. So the transcript is a very dynamic object. So you have 60 assertions on it. You could have 5 assertions on it. You could have 25 assertions on it. And so what the CLR approach allowed us to do was to have a very dynamic, expandable, and contractible credential. So this is a little bit far afield from, the idea of badges and single assertion credentials, like what's my birth date, those types of things. We're expressing a number of assertions in a single object that is portable. So whenever I go into the wallet, what I'm looking at is, all of my credentials that I've imported. So a few different pieces and parts here. One is, not only do we support verifiable credentials, it also supports the CLR, it supports badges, and anything that you can package in a CLR. So in other projects kind of derivative from this work, we do things like teacher licenses, we do things like test results, and all of that is kind of built on this interoperable approach of CLR as a data transport mechanism. So as I demo live software, there's a few different pieces and parts to this puzzle, and basically it's like my CIO says, we'll treat you so many different ways, you have to like one of them. So I have a number of different objects in my wallet here. I've got the transcript, which I'm going to show you. I've got badges that I can embed with that transcript, and I've got other industry credentials that have been that I've uploaded into this wallet architecture. And of course, because this is our QA site, it goes super fast. It helps if you click the button. So what we've done here is, this is a verifiable credential. So we take the CLR, which is one parent object with a number of assertions inside of it. So I have the learner and I have the publisher, which is actually the high school. Then I have the transcript document. So we actually embedded the PDF as a base64 object inside that CLR. So everything in this package is portable. It doesn't rely on any parent system to move around or get more detail about the data. The detail is already there. We also have GPA. We have each class represented individually, as well as the results, any alignments that may be referencing outside data sources. So another part of the open source world in IMS Global is this idea of OpenSalt, the case network. And so PCG provided this OpenSalt to North Dakota and actually coded all of the course codes and their alignments with the standards there at North Dakota. So what I can do from my geometry test is actually look at that geometry assertion and how it aligns to the rest of the curriculum. So really, really deep visibility to the data around these credentials. So I can do a few different things here. One is I can verify that this credential is valid. And so what happens here is that this tests the validity of the verifiable credential package, or that encoding of that object. And once it can verify that and says, yep, this is a real verifiable credential, then I know that everything here is tamper evident or tamper proof. Nothing has been changed. Otherwise, the system would not even understand how to package it. The other thing I can do, I can download that entire JSON package here. I can also download that PDF that was embedded there if I'm just looking for the human readable data. We've also got a number of integrations. So within this transcript, I can, through our integration with Identify, I can actually create my smart resume on their talent marketplace. So we really, again, focus on interoperability, and the way that we focus on interoperability is to do it. We didn't just talk about it and talk about how interoperable we are. We actually did it. And so when I click, create smart resume, that starts the publishing process into that smart resume talent marketplace. I'm not going to get too deep into that, but it's there and it's functional. So the next piece of it, I can share credentials through a few different ways. One is I can share them via email. So meeting the marketplace where it's at. This whole thing about verifiable credentials and about CLRs and about blockchain and verification and proof and so on is a lot. Just this 20 minutes of talking is a tremendous amount. So we have to meet the marketplace where it is. And so we've enabled the opportunity for you to simply email a link to someone that maintains that verifiability within the object itself. So I simply, have a recipient and I hit send. Okay, so I sent that transcript. And what that means is now, if I look at the email, I now have a verifiable transcript credential in my email. And so that user that I sent that clicks the link. If I weren't logged in, they would log in and they would get a very similar view, a very detailed view of this comprehensive learner record from the site, such that they can verify and download any of the data they need. So we kind of try to help them walk through that. Hey, you can confirm the authenticity through this verify tool. You can look at download the PDF, and you can actually, if your system can interpret a verifiable credential, which we believe that's where the entire credential marketplace is headed, where this embedding of CLRs and badges and other credentials will head towards a verifiable credential model. And actually, that work is actively being done with the Open Badge 3.0 and the CLR 2.0 work at IMS right now. So I have all the same functionality as a verifier. So that's the non-blockchain stuff. So now we get into the blockchain stuff. So I've already connected some wallets here just to save us some time and struggle of watching grass grow. But what's important here is that we have used a trust over IP approach. So we have what's called a relationship DID, or decentralized identifier. What that means is that I've created a unique relationship between this wallet, this web wallet, and my mobile blockchain-based wallet. This is on the sovereign network, and I can send credentials to that wallet. So whenever I send a credential to the wallet, I'll just pop up the device here. Whenever I send a credential to the wallet, it's a little bit nebulous right now, because this is frankly new stuff. And part of the credentials world is the original use case was verify if I am over 21 to buy alcohol, right? That was it's actually a scaled approach, a scaled architecture right now that does that work via a blockchain architecture. But I have this thing called the credential that's called a CLR URL. What we did was we have the transcript, we've got the learner name, and then we embedded that URL inside the credential. The other thing that we do is we add a machine readable transcript into this blockchain-based wallet, which is the JSON object, the machine readable object. So you're like, well, if I have a wallet and I have stuff in it that I don't know how to read, what do I do with that, right? How does that help me? Well, that's the value of the blockchain, is really that the blockchain is verifiable in the sense that it only verifies that the conversation between these two systems was tamper-proof. Nothing changed, and it's all verifiable back to the originating source. But we did add a piece into the Open Credential Publisher in order to prove that out. So what we have here is we have a tool that allows you to create proof requests. So I'm going to create a proof request to myself that I'm then going to, with my wallet here, I'm going to scan this QR code. Whenever I do that, it says, hey, the Open Credential Publisher wants this proof. Do you want to share it with them? And so I simply say, yep, I'm going to share that credential with them. And the person that's operating this proof request is the verifier. So they're the same person that received the email, the same person that I am going to send my transcript to, so on and so forth. But now I have a validated proof on the sovereign network with that URL embedded in it. I can do the same thing for the other types of credentials that we have published, like a machine readable transcript. So we have, proving out the entire ecosystem. So not only do we have the opportunity to create a smart resume with the talent marketplace of Identify, we also have the shareable links via email and secure transaction there. And we also have, 2 wallet providers in IDRamp and Evernym, the Connect.me, and Trinsic wallet will all interoperate with these credentials. So very fast, lots going on here. The final thing that you can do is you can actually create collections. So if I wanted to put a bunch of credentials together to send them as one object, I can do that here. So if I wanted to put this industry credential and a badge and a transcript, all in one package, one verifiable package, that will then create a new CLR. So the other ones you saw, they were published by the high school. In this case, whenever I create this new credential, it's actually going to be a self-published credential. So it's saying this CLR was created by this web wallet basically, but since we packaged our credentials the way we did, where each assertion here is its own verifiable credential, each one of these assertions is verifiable back to the originating issuer. So we have kind of a both and approach, where we have verifiability all the way down to the individual assertion, but you can still communicate just one package, because I don't want to send somebody 65 things just to prove that I went to high school. But in some cases where I need to prove that, to get into this honors program, I needed X GPA, I needed, these credentials on my transcript. It's all embedded and machine readable. So I go pretty fast and I cover a lot of things, but that is the high level. The other thing that you might be interested in, just the idea of a decentralized identity. You're like, well, what might that be? So we've actually built in to the system the ability to actually log in with a proof. So I've received a credential in my blockchain-based wallet that has verified that I own my email address. And so what I can do with my wallet here is I can log in with that credential proof. So we're doing this not only with the Sovereign Network, but through our partnership with IMS Global, also with Microsoft and the Authenticator app. Whew, okay, so I'm sure there might be some questions or other thoughts. So with that, I'll hand it back. Tracy,
Yeah, great demonstration. We didn't even talk about phase 3 and phase 4. That might be a separate session altogether, but phase 3 of the project brought in the open badge, and Marty keeps expanding it beyond that as well.
Yes.
And then I'd also like to say the amount of work that's going on behind the scenes with the academians defining these credentials in the case, as well as stackable credentials in the Bismarck State College, and defining the pathways and defining all those credentials in Credential Engine is all hugely busy work going on. And that's by a different mindset than technicians at this point. It's academia.
So I did share earlier in the chat, there is a there was a wallet scan published by Jobs for the Future, JFF, and it has some really good information for those of you just kind of getting introduced to this idea of wallets, this idea of self-sovereignty. They do a really good job of identifying a number of folks that are out in front of this work, including, of course, and the presenters on this call. So I'll paste that back in the chat as well. So Gavin, to your question about adoption migrating from old systems to new, is exactly why we did the pilot work with Microsoft. So what that does is that allows you to tie into your existing Azure AD. You can tie a decentralized ID on the ION network to that identity in Azure, and then that becomes your decentralized identity. So you kind of bridge the gap between your current SSO model and what I just showed you with the logging in with that email credential. But Tracy, you probably have some deeper insights on that from the state level.
The state will be going to, and has actually produced now, using Azure citizen IDs, if you will. So basically, you can register as a business in there. Once verified, you'll be able to log into multiple different agencies using that credential. We already have that in play today, but we're just starting to move to Azure right now.
And Mark, maybe you have some thoughts from the kind of standards world of how these standards actually get adopted over time.
It's slower than we would like, but thanks to leaders like yourselves, actually, that are pushing the envelope and the point of the spear, others see the value in this, and they have their own use cases. And as long as everyone is using a common standard, then we can rest assured that these learning records will be interoperable, and that there won't be any data that gets corrupted or lost, basically. I had a question. You hear about self-sovereign identity and decentralized ID. In general, are they the same thing? And what's the big benefit, would you say, Marty?
Well, so self-sovereign identity is different than decentralized identity. Decentralized identity is the technical approach to identifying something without any other identifying information. So it's creating this identity like a wallet, where I can connect to that wallet, I can deliver data, but I can also receive data from it, and I can trust that decentralized identity has not been tampered with. Self-sovereign identity is actually the idea of owning your identity. So it's a little bit different, and we have this discussion in the teacher space a lot, because in our teacher project, we're not actually providing ownership of the credentials to the teachers. We're simply providing agency, and that's a big differentiation. So self-sovereign is the idea of ownership of your identity, and then decentralized ID is actually the facilitation or the technical approach of how a thing is identified on a decentralized network. Hopefully that makes sense. It's two very complex topics that we could have a whole conversation
on. Michael just asked a question regarding when we use the word a common standard, are you referring to a technical or a data standard or competency standards? And the answer is yes to all.
Mm-hmm.
The competency standards at a very high level is really trying to get down to a skill an individual has, and that will meet the employment workspace of job roles and the skills that are present in that job role. And that's how electronically we're going to be matching up individuals with employment opportunities based off skill, not always off of a degree or a certificate, based off your abilities.
Maybe Tracy, you could speak to the employer side of things that we're slowly learning about.
Yes, employers, the employers are being represented by the T3 Innovation Network, which is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And that's been a little bit of a slower start, but it's called the last mile is what we're referring to now, is how do we get the employers involved in this? And in North Dakota, we have received our first employer, and after spending 30 minutes with them, they're pretty excited about this. And I think once the employer community starts to really understand what's happening with this and the value, it's really going to take off.
Yeah, that was a really interesting conversation to hear from the employer. They started thinking about how they would use these things. They started ideating. Well, we came in on one topic, and they added about 15 topics, or 15 areas, in that half an hour of discussion.
Yep. There are use cases were things that we hadn't even thought about yet.
Yeah. So that's why this is a very kind of collaborative discussion, because there are questions that have not been brought to bear in any of these conversations yet. So socializing this type of work and playing around with it. OpenCredentialPublisher.org, you can go create a wallet, you can go play with it, try it out, ask questions, be part of the conversation. What else?
Well, I was going to ask a question, but it looks like Michael has a question for Tracy.
Yeah, I'll give you my contact information in my email.
All right. Well, actually, my question, Tracy, is this is such exciting work, and it's so cutting edge, bleeding edge, so far ahead of where so much of the country is right now. And I'm wondering, how are you messaging this work? Because I think when a lot of people hear the word blockchain, like, they have the same reaction when they hear the word interoperability. It's a blank stare, and all of a sudden, they go, So how are you messaging this project?
Well, through multiple organizations, Midwest Higher Education Consortium is really representing the CLR well for post-secondary, and digital credentialing is becoming a pretty popular term in campuses now in the post-secondary world. So that's kind of getting its own steam behind it. As far as engaging into stackable certificates and those type of digital credentials, once again, when we approached the college about doing this, they were surprisingly all about getting involved, and super engaged, because it's a lot of work on their end to do this. We're focusing in the cybersecurity area right now, because that seems to be more of a common language across state lines. Everyone is trying to address cybersecurity and getting credentials in that. And those conversations have led to many different types of meetings with different organizations in the cybersecurity area. And we're kind of waiting for that to evolve past cybersecurity as well. Within the K-12 community, I had my first statewide meeting with high school counselors, and surprisingly, there wasn't any resistance to this at all. As far as the blockchain conversation, it's become a non-conversation. Blockchain turned out to be the easiest part of this entire project, and especially with the trust over IP, just understanding the concept of yeah, Mark, I'll have you address Wellspring too. Absolutely. Just the concept of verifying the issuer of the credential, because the credential is already guaranteed to be non-tamperable. Just those basic concepts, those will be the interesting ones when people start to actually consume the CLR. And Mark, I'd welcome you to talk about Wellspring.
Well, I was just was directing the participants to the web page that link goes to. This is a multi-year initiative that IMS is undertaking to demonstrate key aspects of the use of these open standards for the types of use cases that Tracy and Marty have shared with you today. Part of the challenge definitely is in the development of competency frameworks and making them relevant to business constituents and stakeholders. And you'll read their case studies about experiences that our participants have had, and look forward to the community learning from each other. And that's why we're sharing those resources with you all.
I think somebody asked me to answer the question of challenges. Obviously, there's been a lot of challenges. Our biggest pain point in North Dakota is our state's security infrastructure with zero trust. And Marty can attest that publishing this out into Azure with zero trust, when Microsoft and AWS still haven't even figured out what they're doing yet, has been very challenging. And we're just about that far from going to production, but it's been a terrible experience. I don't want to hear the word firewall ever again.
Yeah, well, yeah, I agree, Tracy. I think zero trust is where many infrastructures are headed due to these issues around cybersecurity. And actually, how to your question around an example employer use case, there's a cybersecurity credential project going on in North Dakota right now with Bismarck. Is it Bismarck, or
yeah.
With Bismarck Community College and their cybersecurity credential, and streamlining the pathway for those students in employment. So the rich description in OpenSalt, carrying that into a wallet, also aligns well with what data an employer might need around that cybersecurity credential. So that's one employer use case. And I'll say the Identify work going on in Arkansas and other places, and also here, that talent marketplace approach, where the employer is the one searching for the candidate, not the candidate searching for the employer. And the employer being able to say, oh, I want this person with these credentials. And it also reduces bias. To Susan's point earlier about equity inclusion, a lot of these technical approaches and kind of this zero knowledge proof approach, where you get a bunch of credentials for an individual, but there is no bias introduced by any identifying information.
So the use case that we often hear about is the holder of the credentials being able to publish their skills, credentials, to an employer site or an employment site anonymously. And so that's how we're able to provide the discovery of skills available to the employer, and then eventually, with permission, match the two up. Any other questions?
So I just, Jonathan, I just received a text from someone else on the Innovate EDU team who's going to need access to our webinar room. So I hate to end this fabulous conversation, but this was like the easiest panel moderation I've ever had to do. I didn't have to do anything. I just sat back and listened to you guys have a fabulous conversation. Thank you so much. This was absolutely incredible. Jonathan, I'm going to turn it over to you to wrap things up.
Yes, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to our panelists and everyone who participated. If you enjoyed this event and want to check out more, visit our website, www.projectunicorn.org/events. We've got our full lineup of webinars and conference participations there on the site. Please check it out. The links are going to be in the chat. Our next event is the latest in our bite-sized data fundamentals series, a quick 30-minute webinar about an introduction to data governance on the 13th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Please join us for that. We have 3 other webinars in the Great Data State series. We've been to Wisconsin, we've been to Nebraska, and we've been to South Carolina. All 3 of these, and soon our North Dakota webinar, will be on our YouTube channel. We've got a link to all those recordings, and I will send all of this information to you after the webinar, including a link to this recording. Thank you so much for being here, and we hope to see you at the next one. Have a great afternoon. Bye.